Hey guys, welcome to this week's episode. And Liz and I are going to talk about making a proper apology. And this is something that we've talked about for a long time. We've mentioned it in other podcasts and in different platforms. And her and I have talked about making a podcast on this for quite a while and just really felt impressed to do it. This is going to really bless you. It's going to challenge you. There's some pretty strong conceptual language in here in terms of how to go about making an apology. And so it's going to challenge you. But I believe you'll be blessed, encouraged, and strengthened as you listen. All right, so this is something that we've been talking about, really talking about for quite a while now. And I think is extremely important. I feel like we've hinted around at this a little bit, but never really hit this directly head on, which is really basically just how to make a proper apology. And over the years, this is something that, we've grown in, but especially with our kids, even from when the older ones were younger and with the younger ones now, we'll tell them, when they give an apology, it's like, well, sorry if that upset you or whatever. And we'll stop them and say, no. There's a right way to apologize. And that wasn't it. And there's a lot of adults, honestly, that need to learn this. And I think the root as to why people would give an improper apology sometimes can just be they're ignorant of how to do that. No one's trained them. No one's taught them. It's never crossed their mind. But a lot of times it's pride.
Right.
Because pride will keep you shifting blame onto somebody else instead of just owning it and saying, yeah, I totally missed it here. I totally blew it. And I need to ask for your forgiveness and then begin to make it right. And so we want to talk about that, what that looks like.
Right. And it's so important whenever we are going to make an apology that the other person we're apologizing to really feels like we've given them an apology, that we really were, there was nothing left in the open or undone, or where there wasn't 100% resolve in the apology between the two people, because the goal is...
That's what I was going to say. Yes.
Yes.
The goal. There's a goal with an apology.
Oh, I wonder if we have the same goal.
I think so.
I don't know now. The goal is, I think, that the other, you don't lose connection. Part of maybe the goal is that you don't lose connection and relationship, because a lot of times if something's left undone or you don't properly apologize, that leaves room for disvalue or air to come in, or questioning of relationship, or, where you just feel unhonored and disvalued.
Right.
And when that happens, it makes us not want to be around the other person. Therefore, we lose connection with that person, with that relationship.
Yeah,
and
I think that's what I was going to say, is I think that when it comes to apology, that is probably one of the main goals, is that it keeps proper connection, proper relationship.
Yeah, okay.
There's another, the other side to the apology coin is that it helps to keep you humble.
Oh, true.
And I've said this before, that if you've gone a week and you haven't apologized, you probably have a pride problem. Because honestly, I can't remember too many days that I go without saying, I apologize for that, or I'm sorry for that. Sometimes I say I apologize because, Pastor Bobby,
right.
He would say, don't ever say you're sorry. That's because he associates saying you're sorry with you're worthless. So for me, it's just saying sorry is the same as an apology. But anyways, however you say it, if you go a pretty lengthy period of time and you've not used those words to express that you were wrong, then you're probably more wrong than what you realize. Because human beings, or maybe it's because you haven't been around anybody for a while.
That could be true.
Human beings, when we get together, and of course we're with people, I feel like we have we're around plenty of people.
Right.
and that doesn't change and won't change, and that's great. But we find ourselves really working to make relationships stay good. And part of what that requires is that for us to go back at times and say, I didn't, and you need to be sensitive to it.
Right.
Not just when it's really bad and it blows up and then
right.
you're like, well, okay, well, all right, well, I'm sorry. You might be, but you kind of waited too late. And when you can keep the apology, asking for forgiveness, asking for an apology language consistent in your vocabulary, then as part of your your makeup and how you relate to people, you're going to keep relationships healthier,
Yes,
easier,
yeah.
and better and longer. And it's very normal for us to say, I apologize that I spoke the way that I did. I didn't mean to be, short with you is a term, we'll use, or, I'm sorry I didn't express that the way I meant to, or just flat out, I was totally wrong in how I approached that. Whatever the situation is, we do that very often. And
Yeah.
I believe it served us well.
I believe so. Yeah.
If I could pick something that I think that we are professionals in, we are professionals. We have nearly mastered. We're like third degree black belts in conflict resolution. Now, we still have a lot to learn, no doubt. I'm not saying that we're all that in a bag of chips, but
Maybe.
we
No, I'm just kidding.
we have really made an effort to make
right.
this in our own relationship, but even with other relationships that we have, and we take it to the extent, even with our own children. Multiple times I've went to my boys and said, I apologize. And we have one child in particular that he'll push buttons faster. And I have to admit that he's pushed my buttons plenty of times. and I've had to go to him many times and say, I apologize. I was wrong in what I said here.
And where I apologize, I didn't even if you didn't say anything wrong or you didn't necessarily do anything wrong to the person, I think sometimes in a situation it's important to admit that we didn't handle ourselves correctly and our emotions, and just owning up to that to the people who saw it, of saying I am sorry, I did not handle myself correctly. And I'm sorry that you had to see that. And I acknowledge that I was wrong. And, I'm just trusting the Lord. I'm believing. And to me, that shows a lot of humility on your part. And what it does, even if you didn't affect, the person directly, but they saw you, so you affected them indirectly, for you to acknowledge that you were wrong, especially to them, it really builds trust that
Right.
that even if they make a mistake and even if they have to apologize, that you're not gonna shun them or think terrible of them or anything like that. So it really does bring connection.
Yeah, when you're humble, it says to people that you're dealing with directly or indirectly, that person is willing to work at relationships.
Yeah.
And they are willing to admit when they're wrong. And that alone will help build trust in people.
Yes.
Because when you see somebody that they're just never wrong, it's hard to trust a person like that.
That's true.
Because then when you go to get in a relationship with them, and there's always conflict in every relationship.
Always.
And if you think there's not, then you're kidding yourself.
That's right.
There's always conflict in every relationship. And so whenever people find themselves and they find themselves around people that are so prideful they can't acknowledge when they're wrong, you can't build trust, because it's like that person's really not willing to work on that relationship and work through problems. That's how you build trust.
That's right.
Is when
Yeah.
you work through things, having positive conflict, having conflict resolution, to where you come to an agreement, you come to a place of unity, you come to a place of some breakthrough in communication, relationship, all of that. And so then when you find somebody that's always willing to humble themselves, they're the easiest people to have a relationship with. Pastor Bobby, someone we've mentioned, a lot on this podcast and just in our life. And he's been a spiritual father to me. And he told me something one time, and I actually don't agree with him on this, but it's working pretty well for him. So I don't totally disagree either. But he said that he'll apologize to people even when he's not wrong. And I told him, I said, man, I would never do that. And he said, yeah, but people are worth it and the relationship's worth it. And I still don't totally agree with that. I wouldn't go and apologize to somebody unless I was wrong. But I'm definitely always looking for if I've done anything wrong, I want to know. And when I find where I was wrong, I will absolutely go and apologize very quickly because I value people and I value relationships. And if people would just lower their pride and say, you know what, anytime I find myself where I've been wrong, I'm going to go. And even if I don't think the other person that it really affected them, I'm going to go. Now, sometimes I'm certain that I haven't been aware of things.
Sure.
No doubt. We're not always all aware of things all the time, but I'm going to go the extra mile. And if I know that I did something that even potentially could have hurt somebody, I'm going to go and say, I just want to ask for your forgiveness.
That's right.
It's really important.
Because what you're saying there is that you value relationship over being right.
Over being right, yeah.
Which is so important. And when people know that you value them, that you're going to work through something, that you don't always have to be the person that's right, then it's going to draw you closer together.
And here's the thing in relationships, you can be right or happy, but you probably can't be both.
Really?
Well,
yeah. It's true. It's true because
it's when I say happy, I mean, if you're going to be right and you have to be right all the time, you're not going to have a good relationship with whoever that is.
Right.
So,
yeah,
it's really important that you realize you're not right all the time.
That's right. So with that being said, because I think this is something that I have learned from you over the years, is what does a proper apology sound? What does it sound like? Yeah.
So here's how a proper apology doesn't. Here's what it doesn't look like. You come in inside and you saw me.
You said that you were going to clean up the trash
there
outside.
You go. You got the scenario. And then I say to you, oh, well, I'm sorry if that upset you. And so it's kind of like you use the word sorry, or you could say, I apologize if that made you mad. So it's almost like you're apologizing, and people use that as a scapegoat all the time, and that is no apology.
And actually,
an apology. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, and so when you said that didn't make me feel valued. That made me feel like you were like, get off my back, leave me alone, and we're not going to talk about it.
It's almost kind of like, well, I want to smooth things over, but I'm not willing to acknowledge that I was wrong. And a real true apology has to come from a place of not acknowledging that you were wrong.
That's right.
Which is actually why I don't really think you should apologize unless you were wrong, because how can you acknowledge you were wrong if you weren't?
True.
But when you know that you're wrong, the very first thing, because we tell this to our kids, just the other day, we had a situation where we had to tell one of them to apologize, and he was like, sorry. Sorry. Yeah, and he used the word if. And I think, and then another time it was sorry, but you really said something wrong to me. And a lot of adults do the same thing. And it should be, here's how an apology should go. So, you asked me to clean up the trash or whatever it was, take the trash out, and you come inside and you say, you told me you were going to do that and you didn't do that. What I should say is, you're right, I did say that, and I was wrong for not doing that. And I want to apologize to you because I preferred myself over you. And I didn't stick to my word either. And I was completely wrong in that situation. Will you forgive me? And of course, the proper answer from you would be, yes, I forgive you. And then on top of that, I shouldn't just go, okay, cool. Well, hope the trash gets taken out. Then you go. And if you can fix something, then you go and fix it. And so all of those things are important with an apology. And when you come and you make an apology, it shouldn't have any like addendum to it. It shouldn't have anything that's attached to it. That's, it should just be come and say, I was wrong. I apologize. Will you forgive me? Mm-hmm. And then it shouldn't be laced with, but I really want to talk about the way that you handled yourself in the situation.
Right.
No, you let the Lord deal with them. You let them deal with them. And there might be a time when you can approach them in that, but just make your apology and move on.
That's right.
If it's because a lot of times people, it's like, it's the pride thing coming up. It's like, I'm going to apologize here, but they're going to know that they were really wrong in the situation.
Right. And really what you're doing is shifting blame
Totally.
onto somebody else, and you are not taking responsibility for your action or lack of action. And I think that is the place where people get tripped up a lot, is that they don't want, it's hard to take responsibility when you are wrong. It's hard to own up to your part that wasn't working, or the words that you didn't uphold, because it's in like our human nature to, it makes us feel bad, because generally, like, I mean, I don't want to make other people feel displeased with me. So that would be sometimes why too, maybe we wouldn't fully apologize, but it's so important, just what we've said, of lowering yourself and taking ownership, taking responsibility, and saying, I am sorry. Say what you're sorry for, and then ask for forgiveness.
And even again, before that, admit you were wrong.
Yes, yeah.
You know, because sometimes people can, it's like, and that's kind of like another step, to just say you're sorry, but not really acknowledge where you were wrong. And the thing is, if you don't acknowledge where you're wrong, then that person that you're trying to have a relationship with doesn't have as much trust in the relationship as they could if you acknowledged, this is where I was wrong, and I was wrong, and now I'm asking for forgiveness. Because they're, in the back of their mind, they're going to go, okay, well, they're saying that they're sorry, but are we going to have to cross this bridge again?
Right.
Are we going to have to go down this? Do they even really, are they just saying they're sorry because I'm ticked off, or because it hurt me? Or are they saying they're sorry because they realize they were really wrong?
Right.
And that's incredibly important. So when you realize the point of an apology is, yes, it keeps you humble, but then it's also to build relationship.
That's right.
Then you need to go through every effort necessary in that relationship to help gain that person's trust back. And if that means just humbling yourself down to the lowest level, are the people in the relationship worth it? Or is your pride? Is your pride more important? Are they more important, or is your pride more important?
Right.
And if you're not willing, I'm just being blunt to, yes, you, the listener, if you are unwilling to lower yourself and just place other people before you, you got a pride problem. It's a true story. And there's probably been a reason why we haven't talked about this. We've talked about making a podcast about this, but just haven't done it. And it's because it's pretty strong language.
Right.
But it's really worked really well for us. And I'm not saying we've done it perfect, but we do work this in our life. It does work in our life.
And we have good relationships.
We do.
And I would say, you know, especially with our children, because we've humbled ourselves, we've admitted when we were wrong, and we apologize and ask for forgiveness, then they have been willing to come to us and tell us when they're wrong. Mm-hmm. And they've been quick to apologize.
And they actually have more respect for us.
Yeah.
And the reason is because meekness, or humility, but meekness is not weakness, it's strength.
That's right.
So it's a stronger position. When somebody can't acknowledge they're wrong, it's because they carry a weakness in their soul. Mm. But when somebody can just say, man, I was totally wrong, and here's where I was wrong, and I'm asking for forgiveness, that's a strong person.
Yeah.
And so
powerful.
If you can't do it, that means you need to grow in the Lord. But if you can do it, you're gonna really bring a lot of benefit to you and to people. So
yeah, and
make it a priority.
Make it a priority. And I would say, just very practically, make sure you look people in the eyes. And so when you're especially apologizing to your children, I have had to get on a lower level. I'm pretty short too, so now I don't have to. But when the boys were littler, I can remember having to get on my knees and look them in the face.
Now you have to stand on the stair.
Yeah, now, and just get into their eyes so that they know. I would say I'm wrong, and whatever I was wrong for, and I apologize. Most of the time it was because I reacted to something that they did, and I didn't want to break relationship. I didn't want them to feel disvalued. So I think that's so important. And I can say at this juncture, like, we have very strong relationship with our children. And I think a lot of it goes back to that we've been able to, make sure we own up to our part that's wrong, because they need to know, like, we're human. We're not perfect. We're not going to get it right 100% of the time. And so it's just a good posture to take.
What you're doing is like, and there's no parent that could listen to this that would say, I want my child to grow up and be prideful and never acknowledge that they're wrong. Like, no parent would say, I want that for my child, but they themselves oftentimes will be that way. And so they communicate with their kids that way, and then they expect their kids to turn out different. Now, your kids are going to turn out just like you for the most part. I mean, on average, that's what's going to happen. And so if you are unwilling to acknowledge when you are wrong, you should not be surprised that your kids won't do that. And
you need to.
So if you want to see your kids grow out of that, you need to start. You need to be the one to start lead in that area.
Lead it in that area. And I would say, just to also make sure, even if you're only like 0.01% wrong, own your point
own
zero.
Your part. That's right.
Own your point. And it always takes somebody to go first. Oftentimes we want the other person to come and apologize to us, and then we'll be willing to apologize for our part. But how about you just go first?
And maybe they should. Maybe
right?
they should. Yes. But who cares? Is the relationship is it valuable to you or not? If it's not valuable, don't worry about it. Just stay being right and on your justice horse. Or you could just say, you know what, whatever. I love them and I want to get this thing fixed. I'm going to go to them and I'm going to own up to what I did. And then expect nothing in return.
That's right.
Just apologize. And if they come back and apologize, then great. It worked great. If they didn't, then you've at least planted some seed and you've kept that doorway open as far as your part's concerned.
That's right. And you've done your part.
Yeah.
You've owned your part. That is some of the biggest thing, is that we own our part.
Yeah. Yeah. Amen.
So, when was the last time you apologized? If it hasn't been in the last couple of days, I guarantee.
As a matter of fact, if you haven't apologized in the last week, go to somebody and ask them for an apology, just for practice sake. Just go and say, I'd like to apologize to you for not apologizing lately.
Yeah.
And again, we're just kind of being funny, but we're not trying to overstate it. But I think the point is that human beings make a lot of mistakes in communication, but the biggest mistake they make is not going back and making it right. Do your part and make it right.
That's right.
Make a good apology. Amen?
Amen. Thank you for listening in on this conversation. Make sure you subscribe to this podcast, give us a 5-star rating, and write a review. Share with your friends and on your socials. For more information about Ward Ministries, check out wardmen.org. If this podcast is encouraging you on your marriage and family, we want to hear about it. Email us at info@wardmen.org, and make sure you keep your eye out weekly for the latest podcast on marriage and family.